Okay. Okay, Alan, Linda, the only two who aren't muted. Okay. Good morning, folks. I saw quite a few of you well, actually I only saw Linda and actually I only saw Alan yesterday as we were out weeding. But welcome to the latest Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown virtual service from my living room. As you know, I'm Mary. You're going to get tired of hearing my voice because it's the only one you're going to hear today. Carly is playing the piano from home, and Rick is tending to the Zoom, and hopefully he doesn't have too much to do. The UUFP is a community where we've been providing a liberal religious view to the Pottstown area for more than 50 years. Our tradition draws from the wisdom of the world's religions, the guidance of reason, and direct experiences of mystery and wonder. We believe that every person matters, and each person has the right and the responsibility to follow their own conscience. I hope to touch your spirit, your heart, and your mind today. We are guided by the 7 principles that would normally be on the back of the order of service. Today's is the interconnectedness, I think, the interconnected web. We have Zoomed here from our kitchens and living rooms and dens and quasi-deck over there, Rick. But we're all here because we like to join each other on Sunday mornings. So wherever you are, whomever you are, I'm glad you're here. Hi. And remember to stick around for coffee hour. So nobody sent me any announcements. So if you've got an announcement, unmute yourself and speak into the microphone. Oh, crap. Going once, going twice. Okay. So now that, even though that we're at home, we have interruptions. So let's put our phones in worship mode, if you know where they are, and make sure everybody's Zoom is in mute, and the chimes will call us to silence. Oh, sorry. Our chalice lighting. It's on a lazy Susan. My thing's on a lazy Susan. Okay. Our chalice lighting today is from Marjorie Montgomery. It's in the gray hymnal. And it's our life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. Now, Carly, you can unmute, and if you would please play Spirit of Life through once for me. Thank you, Carly. Our opening words this morning, I'm going to have to remember off the top of my head because they're on the printer upstairs. But I would say, our opening words are believe in the science, accept the facts. And would you mind, Carly, can you play that through one more time while I run up to the printer? Carly? Thank you. really knows what that's like. um, the opening words are simple. Believe in the science, accept the facts. Whether it's the weather, climate change, I should say whether it's climate change, COVID-19, or sports. Climate change is real, COVID is nasty, and the hardest thing to do in sport is to hit a baseball. Think about it. Where else does a 70% failure rate qualify you for the Hall of Fame? A quarterback who misses 70% of his passes and a basketball player who misses 70% of his shots are sitting on the bench. The baseball player is the leadoff hitter. So, breathe. All right. Nobody sent me any joys and sorrows either. So if anybody has a joy or a sorrow, unmute your mic and share with us, please. Okay, Frances or Becker, my little sister.
You can call me Becky.
Becky.
Yeah, there were 3 Franceses in our family. So I got called by my middle name, and also it's the name my mother liked better. My name is Frances Rebecca. So anyway, my joy is that it's a beautiful day here, and I love my sister.
I love my sister too. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All righty. Well, Carly, do you have another selection for us? And could you tell us what it is, please?
Do. It's called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, and it's from the show Roberta.
Oh. Thank you. That was very appropriate for today. Thank you very much. The idea, okay, yeah, we can start. And I'm going to be sharing my screen in a moment. It's hopefully he's allowed me. We'll see. The idea for this service, and I'm going to, let's see here, right? Came, oh, I can, thank you. Oopsie, back one. The idea for this service came from communicating with my cousin Pat, she who's looking for the mountain lion in her front yard. And she was talking about the fires out in Santa Cruz. And in particular, what got me was a text saying they were no longer in danger of having to evacuate due to the wildfires. And I thought, this is climate change. And then there were, all, as luck would have it, a lot of interesting articles popped up on the news feed on my phone. And I was doing all sorts of research and everything like that. And then I had my eureka moment. Adam, the fellow who is doing the robot over the Great Barrier Reef, when we were down in the Falklands and South Georgia, he had given a great talk on climate change. And so I thought I had it. I couldn't find it. So he sent it to me again. And it's much better by a country mile than anything I could have come up with. And so we're going to do about half of it this morning. Unfortunately, it's the depressing half. It's the half about all the problems and how we got here and just explaining, it's pretty much the science of it. Because he's a naturalist and he's down there on the reef, and he can say how bad the reef is right now. And then the second half, hopefully we'll be doing next month. So I've edited some of his in addition to shortening it. I also took out some of the real sciencey things because that was not my strength. So we'll get started. So here's the world with the climate change, which is very striking. So let's see here. All right. First of all, I have a question for everybody. I can't see everybody. Let's see if I can do this differently. All right. Oh, that's a little weird. All right. Who believes in that the climate is changing? Raise your hand. Everybody's hands up, I hope. Now, who believes that this is caused by humans? Keep your hand up if you believe climate change is caused by humans. Put it back up. Or not. If you don't have to put it up. Well, when Adam asked that question when we were on the trip, roughly a quarter of the hands went back down. And those of us who left our hands up were a little bit incredulous that, hey, nobody, how, anyway. But the facts are simple. 2 + 2 = 4. No matter, someone could argue, no, 2 + 2 does not equal 4. 2 + 2 = 7. They can argue it all they want, but 2 + 2 = 4. It's a simple fact. And your belief does not change a fact. There is no debate. 98% of climate scientists agree climate change is real and is largely caused by humans. Now, before we start, and don't get all techie about the graph, folks, climate, what is the difference between climate and weather? Climate is viewed on graphs, and it's over time, roughly 30 years or so, 40 years. Weather is what we see outside, and I think everybody has a beautiful sunny day. So climate can be thought of as the average term, thought of as the long-term average of weather patterns. So has the climate changed? Absolutely it has. And this is a fact. And actually everybody, even the climate change human-caused people, don't deny that because the data is the data. The debate, air quotes, is about the cause and what our response should be. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which represents the consensus of scientists from over 190 countries, states the following. The Earth's climate system has demonstrably changed on both global and regional scales since the pre-industrial era, with many of these changes attributable to human activities. More graphically, this is a pie chart of what it means to deny or accept climate change. So out of 13,950 peer-reviewed articles between 1991 and 2012, a whopping 24 of them, this little slice of red here, rejected climate change as caused by humans. Or in scoring analogy, 13,926 to 24. So what do we know? Each of these colors, and I don't know what all the studies are, but they represent different studies. And everyone's data shows the same thing. And it's increased at an alarming rate over the last 40 years. Since 1980, we're just taken off here. And it's temperature, because is used as a measure of climate because that's what we deal with every day. That's what we experience. It's how we know how to get dressed every day. and it determines what the precipitation in an area is going to be. And this graph shows the difference between annual temperatures and average temperature between 1980 and 2010 for 5 independent temperature records over land and ocean. So it's obviously rising, and it's rising greatly. This is an interesting graph, and it's going to move. You're going to see it moving. Now, the raw data, and I wish I knew how to stop it, but I'm not that good in PowerPoint. But the raw data that we're seeing includes natural factors mixed with human factors. So you see a big spike that's going up here. And Becky last night said she thought that might be the Icelandic volcano that went off, is this spike up here. This, where it doesn't have that giant spike in it and the great drops, this is what the change, removing the natural things such as solar changes, El Nino, and volcanic activity. That's what can be, this is everything. The other one is what can be strictly caused by us people, by humans. Now then, how many times have you heard, well, this has happened before? And it has, sort of. So the question he has here is, but hasn't this happened before? And the answer is yes and no. We've gone through many geological cycles, and it has been warmer in the past, and it's been colder. When it was warmer, huge crocodiles roamed the Arctic. And as for dealing with what we're going on today, is that the number of indicators tell us that the warming of the planet is directly due to the release of greenhouse gases, including the fact that we know a whole bunch of things about greenhouse gases and how much has been emitted since the start of the Industrial Revolution. If it was strictly due to natural factors and a solar increase, we would expect warmer days, but not warmer nights, but we're getting both. And as Linda Kay and I learned in the Amazon a couple of years ago, when we noticed that their houses, in addition to being built on stilts for when the rivers flooded, they also slept outside, and they slept outside on hammocks. And they said, 25, 30 years ago, they slept inside in beds, just like everybody else, but it's now too hot at night to sleep inside. So they're seeing it very really. Anyway, there are many other fingerprints that are well documented and that indicate that humans are the cause of the climate change we are experiencing at the moment. We got a bunch of graphs in here. This one is from 1880 to 2015, and it's, I can't remember where it's from, NOAA. And it tells that what we are seeing it rising in recent years. This is about 1980, starting right here. This bump on another graph is about 1940. And then we're starting, and we're just climbing here from 1980 onward. And what we are living through now is what we did to the planet up till 1980. There's about a 40-year lag between what you were doing and what you are seeing in your climate and weather patterns. So that spike in 1940 may most likely or could have been from World War I. The start of the spike in 1940, which would have been what we're seeing in 1980, would have been, I'm guessing, a good chunk of it would have been World War II. But this is a graph here that's your life, if for some of us that were born in the mid-50s. And it's just showing what's happening if you go through to the future. And what are future generations? What are their lives going to be like? What are our lives are going to be like? And we know that there's this delay of 40 years. And what are we putting in the air that's going to impact folks in 2060, when most of us, there are a few of us here that'll still be around, but most of us are going to be gone, unfortunately, as sad as that is. So what we see here, and this is to 2100 is here, but out to 2200, we see there can increase from anywhere from 4 degrees to 9.7 degrees Celsius, or 4.7 to 17.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you think about it, we set a world record, what is thought to be a world record right now for temperature, for a high temperature, which is 130 out in Death Valley earlier this year. Think add 17 or add 7 or 4 degrees or 17 degrees to that 130. And it's pretty scary. It was even 120 some in LA, and they do not get that. But part of the problem we're dealing with, which we'll talk about solutions next time, is the fact that we do have the 40-year delay. In the budget, we talk about kicking the can down the road for the next generation. Well, right now, think back, how much did the folks that are our ancestors, what were they thinking about in 1840? Not about us, I know that, but we have to be thinking about future generations. So what is causing all of this warming? And it's CO2 emissions starting, and you can see it starts to climb about 1850, and then we start really going up on the graph about 1900. And it comes from various sources, fossil fuel burning, liquid and solid burning, everything. But the really, where we start climbing is in the late 1800s, and what came in? Coal. So that's coal. And then the 30s and 40s, we started burning gasoline because we're driving more and more cars. And then it starts increasing more as we're getting more cars and more, we're housing and everything in the 50s and 60s, because we're building, we've got the post-war boom going on in the 50s and the 60s. And they add each time, and it adds at different times because the technology changes. This is what they are independently, but when you add them all together, we're just going woo, straight up. And he has set production and gas flaring in here. He said gas flaring isn't all that great, but it's still causing some. And cement production actually does cause a lot of CO2 emissions. So this is the this is the age we're in. This is, what is it, the epoch that we're in, the Anthropocene, which means that human activity is the dominant change to what's going on in the climate. And don't worry about how busy this slide is. What it basically adds up to is a whole bunch of bad causes adding together to create what is the 6th mass extinction event in world history, or in the last 450 million years. So I was not aware, and I don't know how many of you were aware, and I can't see all your hands, that we're in the middle of a mass extinction event right now. And it has just taken off like a rocket ship, where things have just increased so greatly. In the last 40 years, we have lost 58% of our animal species. And in the history of the world, we learned this years and years and years ago, touring the Museum of Science, the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, that 90% of all life forms ever have gone extinct. Fish populations are down. Marine species are down 50%. When I'm sharing my screen, do you see all yourselves over here on the right? Oh, you do? Okay, let me get rid of you. Bye. Okay. In the last 40 years, we have lost 50% of all marine species, and we've lost 75% of all table food, or the food we eat. So we have more people, less food. So what does a warming world look like? And what methods do scientists use to determine the climate is changing? Well, they see the following: heat waves, droughts, flooding, avalanches, tornadoes, tropical cyclones, and our hurricanes, wildfires, as he's got here, biblical conditions. And in the last 10 years or so, California has had a record wildfire year every year. They had another one this year, and they're just going to keep going and going and going until we get a handle on this. Okay. And since we're really in our little neck of the world are not all that concerned about wildfires, what we are concerned about are the hurricanes and the aftermath of the hurricanes. In the future, we're going to get more and more hurricanes, and they're going to become more intense because we're heating up more. The water is heating up more. And this shows the plot of storms. You can see it from 1925 to 2007, where they're just going up. And like, for example, this year we ran out of names. And Hurricane Beta, we started using the Greek alphabet. Hurricane Beta was the 9th, I believe, this year to hit the US mainland. And what has also changed is the frequency and the strength of these storms. And it's happening around the world. So when we're talking about the strength and the frequency, go back to Harvey, Laura, and Maria, back to back to back, bang, 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 one on top of the other. But we're not alone. It's happening all over, not just hurricanes, but temperatures, droughts. It's just nasty. All right. Now we have climate change and how it's impacting the jet stream. And if you look here, the normal jet stream is on the left. It's kind of a little shape here. This one on the right has gotten much bigger and it has many more fluctuations in it. And what happens is when this happens, it makes weather events last longer because the jet stream is moving more slowly. So what happens when we get the hurricanes in, they dump more rain because they last longer. And we've heard that, time after time, that it's just, they come and they sit over an area and flood them out. And in the hurricanes, the problem, you think it's the wind, but it's not. It's the water, it's the flooding. And part of this is where we come to sea level rise. Since the late 1990s, when things actually dropped a little bit, we've steadily added, on average, 3.41 millimeters of water to the ocean every year. Doesn't sound like much, but it is adding up. And people on beaches will tell you where their beaches have gotten smaller. An increase of CO2 to 400 parts per million would add about 100 feet of sea level. And we're not quite sure how long that's going to take. Maybe 1,000 years, he says, but everything is accelerated since this was written. And the last time we were at 400 parts per million was 4 million years ago. Now, we always hear about glaciers in Iceland and the glacial ice caps up in the Arctic, and we hear about Greenland. But the 800-pound gorilla in this is down south, the Antarctic. And we're going to hear quite a bit about the Antarctic, A, because I really like Antarctica, and B, because it has so much impact to the world's weather patterns, the climate, and it's going to be the big problem in the coming centuries, shall we say. Here we have, if all of this ice melts, every single bit of it, we increase our ocean temperatures by 200 feet, our ocean depths by 200 feet. Of that 200 feet, 175 is down south in Antarctica. So we have, and you look at, if you see, pictures of Antarctica, you will see it looks very flat. It's not. Some of the highest mountains in the world are down there. It's just they are covered in millennia worth of ice and snow. As they told us, every snowflake that's ever dropped on the South Pole is still there. It just adds up every year. Okay, let's skip that for a second. If the sea level rises at 200 feet, all of these red spots are underwater. And so you notice, and it's all in very high population areas. And on this slide, I found this spot, being that that's where Becky lives and I'm from. The Great Lakes become the Great Lake, and it looks pretty much like Wisconsin and Illinois disappear. So if they thought they were safe, nah, not. Now, the sea rise potential just in the U.S., which is slightly different because we still look like we still got Michigan over here, and Great Lakes are Lake Michigan, they're not all joined. But what's missing in this shot? If anybody can unmute themselves and tell me, Becky, you don't count, because you know the answer. Anybody?
Is it the Delta?
Florida
Okay.
is gone.
Florida's missing.
Yeah, there's no
I
Florida.
haven't seen that. Yeah.
Florida is totally gone, and you're right. Look at the size of the Delta has just, so we got a good chunk of Louisiana's gone too.
San Fernando Valley's gone.
Yep.
New York
Over
City
here.
is gone.
Pardon?
New York City is gone. Massachusetts is gone.
Oh yeah. New York
Boston.
City. New York City is, yeah. So there's lots of things gone.
When is this supposed to happen?
Nearest estimate, I don't know. Nearest estimates, we're a few hundred years down the line, but we got to get our butts moving. They don't know. They don't know. This is if Antarctica melts, and Antarctica's got a long way to go. So, where is all the global warming going? 93.4% to the ocean. And then you say, well, the Antarctic ice sheet has only got 2%, 0.02%. Why are we talking about it? We don't really care. Right? Why is this important right now? Well, the polar regions are the canary in the coal mine. We've got various global hotspots that are sensitive to climate change. 90% of the ice shelves in the Canadian Arctic have broken up or melted since the 70s. Glaciers are receding around the world, and precipitation patterns are changing at the poles. More rain up north, more snow down south. And the details I won't get into, they were in some very detailed notes, but they're both due to rising temperatures. Melting sea ice exposes the krill populations, and the krill populations then can be fished more and put into things for various human supplements, but they are critical supply of food for whales and penguins and other sea life. And you think, well, we don't have a problem with declining krill. There are so many of them. Their total biomass, i.e. weight, is greater than the weight of all humans on the planet, those little tiny krill, but they're still declining. And we see starving whales out there, and so we need to watch this. And it's very quick and a little, if you stare at it enough, it's either mesmerizing or nauseating. But this is the Arctic, and this shows ice melt over the years. And the Arctic used to be packed with what they call very thick old ice, which is ice that is 9 years old or more. But less and less of this old ice exists as temperatures warm. But the reason it matters is old ice takes longer to melt. I mean, you think it's 9 years old. It means new stuff got added to it. The new stuff melted, but the old stuff stayed. Now, the old stuff is melting as well. So it's making it harder to form new ice, and it's making it, the old ice is melting faster. Okay, now that our stomachs are back. So now we're going to go down to the 800-pound gorilla. And I'm going to show you one of the impacts, visual impacts to the Antarctic. And this is most of this that we're dealing with is the peninsula, which is the part that I went to. And it's the one that's seeing the most due to the opening of the ozone hole above the peninsula. This is a change from a spot down on the peninsula from the upper is 2006, the lower is 2009. Now you look at this, this is snow and ice right here. It's just, it's really dirty from all the dirt here. This is not stone. This is actually the ice. And you can see how much of it has melted. And in the last 50 years, oh shoot, there are 244 glaciers on the peninsula. 87% really, up until 2005, 87% of them had retreated. By 2016, all 100% of them had retreated. When we were down there, you could hear calving all over the place. Oops, wrong way. Now you think, that doesn't look, how high is that? Doesn't look very high. Well, roughly, that's how high we're talking. Empire State Building. So that's how much has melted. Now, this is how the melting works. When we talk about the ice shelves and icebergs and ice sheets, the difference is the ice shelf over here, this is seawater that melts, forms and melts every year. It goes back and forth. And it has to, depending on what's going on, you have more or less sea ice. The sea ice, this ice shelf, is what holds this ice sheet, which are the glaciers and things, actually on the land. So as this weakens here, you're going to start having, this becomes more vulnerable where the ice sheet will start going into the water. And the ice shelf ice adds nothing to sea level rise because it is actually seawater that has frozen. The ice sheet, however, when that melts, that's where your 200 feet of water is going to come in. Sea level is going to come in. And I had something else I wanted to say about right here, but I went in and out of my head. So here is what we have. Hopefully that's clear. If not, this one I actually know. But on average, 310 cubic kilometers of ice was lost from the ice shelves each year from 2003 to 2012. And that's an increase of about 70%. This is in the western half of Antarctica. The eastern half of Antarctica, the bigger slice, isn't showing as great a decrease. Now here's one that we can watch a little bit. We've all heard of the Larsen B ice shelf. Now I'll give you some statistics on this. It was 700 feet thick. It covered an area of 1,250 square miles. It had been there for 12,000 years. And it broke off, how long do you think and it's very, very thick. Shelf ice is very thick. How long do you think it took to break this monster off? If anybody but Becky has a guess. You don't? It took 35 days for that to break off and send the iceberg out. In total, 720 billion tons of ice broke off in just over a month. And the inset here shows where it broke off. It was on the inside here of the peninsula. And here's just another time lapse showing how the ice just grows and shrinks and grows and shrinks over time. And it had been losing ice since 2002. And I guess I forgot to say when it, did I say when it broke off? 2000, okay. 2002 is when this broke off, but it had started a lot earlier. Now, we've all heard of iceberg with this fancy name of A68, which is still the largest in the world. Again, it broke off the Larsen ice shelf, but it's 5,800 square kilometers, weighs 1 trillion tons. And I was wondering, you know, if we would get a chance to see it while we were there, because I didn't know where it was at the time. And they said, we're lucky at this point, it hasn't moved. It's still just sitting there, maybe inched out in it a little bit, but it hasn't moved because it's just so big. It's going to have more water going underneath it and warming it. And I think that's where I screwed up. Back right here. The problem is on here, the water's moving. See, there's water, ocean water is where the ocean water is warming. It's coming underneath and weakening the ice. And that's what's causing things to break off of more. And so that's when they start breaking off more underneath, that it'll start breaking up a little bit and start moving. I was told they thought it would take about 100 years for it to really move out of there. Or, you know, really start to break up. Because it is still very, very cold and it's a lot of ice to melt. I wish there was another picture besides one from space, but I'm not sure anybody's been down there to see it. So as we start to wrap things up, we can see that there's a lot going on and it's scary. And what's happening isn't in our lifespan. It's probably not even in our children's or our grandchildren's. It's further down the road, and which is part of the problem. But we have to start now or things are just going to get worse. And it makes good economic sense. You hear the argument, oh, it's too expensive to do this, that, or the other thing. But they've calculated it out, and it would actually cost more to not do something than it would to do something. But we have to just convince the right people. And again, that's the next talk. But we have to do something because we want to create a better life for our children, because we want them to go home with just car seats and not gas masks. And we want to save more cute animals from going extinct. So we're going to find out what we can do next month. So thank you very much. Hopefully we weren't too bored. So we're going to extinguish the chalice. And Carly, before we do that, Carly, do you have anything to play? If you don't, I'm cool.
I'm gonna play. Did you want your hymn now? The Blue Boat.
Do I have a hymn?
The Blue Boat Home.
Oh yeah, I wanted Blue Boat Home. You're right. So let's do Blue Boat Home. one time through. Thank you. All right, I'm going to extinguish the chalice, but while we're on the, hopefully the folks who weren't on yet have seen it over my shoulder. Oh. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth or the warmth of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again. Okay. My closing words are, when you walk into a store, some stores, you see a sign that says to you, you break it, you pay for it. Well, we broke it and we're paying for it. But we know how to fix it. And it's our duty to fix it. It's like we don't know how, that we don't know how. We do know how. Smart people all over the world have figured out what to do. We just need to make sure that it's done. Not only for ourselves, because what we put in the air now we're going to feel it in 20, 30, 40 years. And definitely Sam and Maddie are going to feel it. So for ourselves and future generations, namaste, blessed be. And now we're going to morph into coffee hour. Thank you.